voltage to the primary, not permanently, just for small time. So we switch on, press S1. By the way, S1 and S2, there are two switches. They are connected mechanically. That means when they are on, both are on. When they are off, both are off. So when S1 closes, S2 also closes. So this capacitor C comes in parallel with the secondary. So when we switch on S1, then the current through the primary starts increasing and there will be a voltage generated. But then this C, which is uncharged, so it will act as a short circuit across the secondary. So the voltage will not go to the third electrode on the right side. Now, after only a few seconds, we switch off S1, then S2 is also switched off. Then the moment S1 is switched off, then the current which was already flowing, that will become zero. So there will be a change of current. And this will be acting as the magnetizing current. So there will be change of flux linkage, secondary voltage will be induced. But now S2 is open, so C is no longer connected in parallel. So whatever voltage is generated, that will go to the third electrode. And the bottom terminal will go to the earth electrode. So a pulse will be generated. Typically, the turns ratio of this pulse transformer will keep such a way that a 10 kV or 12 kV pulse will be generated. Now, since impulse can be both positive and negative, so the third electrode need to be either positive or negative both. So you have a polarity changing switch, which is very simply, it changes the polarity of the DC voltage. Accordingly, the direction of current in the primary will change and the voltage induced in the secondary will be of the opposite polarity. So this is how this trigger pulse is generated. Then there is a practical problem of recording impulse. For example, we recorded with the help of cathode ray oscilloscopes, which were earlier. Now we have the digital oscilloscope. Whether it is a digital or analog doesn't matter. In our when we were young, analog zeros. Today everything is digital, but still it is a oscilloscope. So now, in an oscilloscope, you always, I think you might have studied that there are always two plates. One we call the Y, the other we call the X. Now the X plate always has a base signal, which is typically a sawtooth waveform. Whereas this is called the time-based signal. Whereas the signal that we want to record should come on the Y plate. Now here is my impulse generator on the left, whereas the CRO is in the control room, because remember this is very high voltage, so we cannot stand inside the lab. Everything has to be within the control room, which is protected. That is quite a distance away. So here from the impulse generator output, first we put a potential divider, because 100 kV or 200 kV we cannot supply it to the CRO. So there is a potential divider, and from the low voltage arm of the potential divider, we take this voltage, a small voltage, to the CRO, to the Y plane. But the issue is that CRO has a typical property that if the time-based circuit is not on, if a signal comes on the Y plate, it will not be recorded. So it means that before the signal comes to the Y plate, the time base should be triggered. But how it can be done? Because exactly when the impulse will come, we don't know. That will depend on my pulse generator and then triggering of the third electrode and so on. So we don't depend on any manual triggering. We go for an automatic system. This is not a very complicated system. So what we do, we put an antenna very close to the impulse generator. It's a very normal antenna. It picks up the electromagnetic radiation when the sphere gap fires. Then that signal immediately comes through a cable to the X plate. So the time base is started. Whereas the impulse comes to the Y plate through a cable which we call a delay cable. That means this cable incorporates an intentional delay in the wave propagation of the impulse. So this antenna signal comes without any delay, so time base is fired first, whereas the Y plate is triggered later with a delay. So that means when the Y signal comes, the time base is already on. So the entire signal will be recorded. The entire impulse wave will be recorded. But in spite of all that, I have already told you that this exact synchronization is really difficult. So sometimes this zero is very difficult to get, which I have earlier explained. Then you can ask me, how do we generate this delay? Well, this is also not a very difficult one. We all know that the propagation velocity of a signal along a transmission line, that is given by this formula. That is velocity of light divided by square root of epsilon r and mu r. For normal signal cables, mu r is 1, the signal cables that we use. So this equation becomes only c by square root of epsilon r. So if this epsilon r is 4 of that cable, that means this cable, whatever insulating material we are using, if it is 4, then the speed of the signal through this cable becomes c by 2. Or in other words, the relative velocity becomes v by c into 100%. Typically, we use Teflon as one of the dielectric of such signal cables, or polyethylene can be also used. And this relative velocity typically is about 60 to 70% of the velocity of light. So therefore, what is the time, per unit length, transit time per unit length? This is the velocity, right? This is the velocity, c by square root of this. So that should be 1 by v. And if the length of the cable is L, then what is the time taken for the signal to transit through the length of the cable? Then T, capital T into capital L. So it becomes capital L by C square root of epsilon r. So therefore, if now C is already known, we know, so we put it. So we can calculate how many microseconds it requires for that signal to traverse through that cable length. And by controlling this L, we can control this time, so that if required, we will put a 20-meter cable or 30-meter cable, so that this signal on the Y plate will always come, let's say, 1 microsecond after the antenna signal. And that is enough for recording the impulse on the Y plate. So this is called a delay cable, which generally incorporates a delay not even 1 microsecond, typically about 0.5 microsecond, which is itself enough for recording by the oscilloscope. So this is a very interesting concept. You can see how very simply the problem has been solved. There was no delay circuit or electronic circuit, nothing. It's just a cable. Anyway, we have to use a cable. From impulse generator to the control room, anyway we have to put a cable. And so that cable itself is used to incorporate the delay of propagation of the impulse from the generator point to the CL. And that solves our purpose perfectly well. Later on, when you come to the laboratory, or if you have the opportunity to come to the laboratory, this would be shown to you, that this cable and all these things. Now, I think now at this point, I have to stop this one, and I will show you something else, a little bit of practical aspects. But you have any question on this part? Anybody has any question?
স্যার যেটাতে পালসটা জেনারেট করছে স্যার একবার বলবেন?
Okay, pulse generator, good.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's go back again. Fine. This one, right? This is you are asking?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now see, first thing is this is a pulse transformer. Okay. You can ask me what is a pulse transformer. Normally, our transformers have sinusoidal voltages or sinusoidal currents. But this one works on the principle of pulse. Now, you know that pulse is a DC, right? Pulse is unipolar.
Yes. Yes.
I should not say DC, but it is unipolar.
Yes.
So, it is like this, that I have a DC source, whatever be the DC source, and a resistance. Why this resistance? So that the current doesn't become very high. Now I switch on S1. What will happen? Some amount of current will flow through the primary.
Yes.
And this current will increase from 0 to a certain value, right?
Yes,
Because
yes.
there will be a DIDT.
Yes.
That DIDT will cause some change in flux linkage also.
Yes.
So secondary some voltage will be generated.
Yes.
But that voltage we don't use. So we have put a capacitor and a switch S2, and S2 is connected to S1. So when S1 is closed, S2 is also closed. So whatever be the voltage that is generated in the secondary side, this capacitor is uncharged. And you know, uncharged capacitor always acts as a short circuit. So secondary will be short circuited. So this voltage will not go to the third electrode.
Yes, sir.
What we'll do, this S1 is pressed for only a few seconds. So this current will be generated, the DC current, and then we'll switch off. Now again current will come down to 0. So again there will be DIDT. Again there will be a rate of change of flux. So again there will be induced EMF on the secondary. But now S2 is open. So this capacitor is disconnected. So whatever be the voltage that is generated, now that will go to the third electrode. And this will be a pulse type nature, because this change of flux is only a pulse type. It is a unipolar change of flux. This is the principle of operation of any pulse transformer. You have not heard about pulse transformer?
Yes.
In any course, you have not heard about pulse transformer. Okay. But then please remember, this is very important. In many circuits, we use pulse transformer. So it is not necessary that a transformer has to work with a sinusoidal voltage. Transformers work on the principle of change of flux.
Yes.
So pulse transformers are quite common in many circuits. Any other question? Any
Thank
other
you, sir.
Anybody else? Any question? Let me show you something else then. This is another file I have prepared for you. Where is that? This is to give you some practical essence, the feel of the practical things. This will be a PowerPoint one. I hope it will come on your screen, because some problem you are facing with PPT in the Google. Something is coming on your screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now you can see this is our high voltage lab. Jadavpur University high voltage lab. You are third year student. Huh? Yes. I think you have not visited our lab. Have you visited any time? No.
Yes, sir. During our first induction program.
Oh, that was only induction, but you have not done any experiment, I think.
No, sir.
Unfortunate, but because we have experiments in our high voltage lab. Anyway, this is our high voltage lab, and whatever I was explaining is, you can see here that you can see my mouse moving. You see here that brown column. There are 4 brown columns. This is actually our impulse generator. And these red columns, they are the extension branches. That this white color boxes are actually capacitors, so that they are connected in parallel. So this is actually is something is our impulse generator in our lab. Then these 2 brown color, column, small things. You can see my mouse.
Yes.
This one is our load condenser. This one. And this small one is our RE, that external RE. So since this is external, I can change it anytime. So we have other resistances in our lab. So if necessary, we'll disconnect it, connect another one. But this generator, there are certain resistances inside this generator, but that we cannot change. Let me see, another figure is, yeah. This is another view from the floor. This was from the top. So you can here see that not very clear, but anyway, you can get an idea that this is how it works. What I want to tell you a very interesting story. I think this should encourage you at least. Look at these 4 red columns. 4 red columns you can see. Huh? Then you can see this sort of slabs here between the 2 red columns on which these white boxes are there, and in between white boxes there were 3 capacitors in each box, and they are quite heavy. I think that each white box weighs about 300 kilo or 200 and between 250 to 300 kilo each one. This all I tell you my own story. It is in 1985. 1985 I joined as a lecturer in our lab or in our department, whatever you can say. Immediately when I joined, this project was going in our lab that we have received these capacitors from Germany, but now this has to be installed. Now, how? The first thing is you have to put them in place. Then only electrical connection comes. Because I am telling repeatedly, the engineering is always different from just a drawing. First, we have to put them in place. Then comes the electrical connection. How do we put it? And please remember, each one is about 300 kilos. So then 2 boxes is 600 kilo. And this is not a small one. This is quite a big one. You see here? You can see the height? It's quite big one. It's about, I think, maybe 20 feet or maybe 22 feet. Now, when we put it, now if it breaks down, it will be a severe accident. And see, there is a person standing at the corner. If he or she is here, there will be a severe problem. A student is standing here. So I was given the responsibility in 1985 that I have to design this structure. You will laugh at it, but that is exactly the first assignment I got as a lecturer. Now you think of my situation. I am an electrical engineer, did my bachelor's, master's, and then after getting the job, I have to now design this structure. And this is for my own lab, so I cannot say no. I have to do it. And I can't say that you bring an expert to do this, because then I am not an engineer, if you say. And so I had to design it. And in that design, what I had to do, I had to compute all the bending moment, all the shear stress diagram. I think you have done something, right? Bending moment, shear stress diagrams, have you done? In your mechanics and others? You must
No,
have
sir.
done. No, in your
We
second
did
year?
not have. We did not have that subject in our. We only had what do you say, static dynamics.
Is it?
Yes, sir.
No bending moment diagram, no shear stress
nothing.
diagram. Oh, this is
I don't
very,
think.
I don't know, I mean, how it can happen. But anyway, in our time, these were there in our course. We did extremely thoroughly all these ones. So, although I was very uncomfortable, but then I started studying. And I went to mechanical engineering department and took some advice. And whatever you are saying now, that I designed in 1985-86. And now you see, after almost 40 years, it is standing, and there was not a single accident or anything that has happened. Now, that's what I say is multidisciplinary. Please remember, my students, that exactly what work you will do in your life, you don't know. Okay, you are studying electrical engineering, fine. But don't think that just knowing some software or knowing some circuit theory or knowing some, machines or etc. makes you a perfect engineer. No, engineering means many other things. So this is just one thing I tell you from my absolutely own life's experience. And I'm very proud that even after 40 years, this is there in the lab. And I think even after I retire, it will be there. So at least something I contributed in the lab. By the way, this is a sphere gap, big one. You can see here now my mouse moving.
Yes, sir.
This
sir.
is a sphere gap of diameter 1 meter. Huge sphere gap in our lab. So we use it only for extremely high voltage measurement. By the way, this impulse generator you see, it can generate up to 1.4 million volts. 1.4 million volts. So if you have to measure that, you can't use any other voltmeter other than this sphere gap voltmeter. Now you will be quite surprised how sphere gap can be a voltmeter, but I can tell you this is a voltmeter. Normally when I say voltmeter, what image comes on your mind? It's a box. There will be an indication, whether digital or whatever. But here, these two sphere gaps are basically a voltmeter. I will explain in my second part of the course that how sphere gap can act as a voltmeter. Very interesting approach that we take. Okay, so now, see, this is a power transformer. Now, you might have seen, but I will ask you a couple of questions. You have to answer me. For example, if you see my mouse, I hope you can see. Now, you can see this cylindrical object on top of the transformer. Here?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me what is it?
A conservator tank.
Conservator tank. Quite good. Now, this conservator tank, why is it used?
Because when the heat is produced, some oil may expense or it is expensive for giving some extra space, something.
Okay, it is, you are quite correct. Let me explain it in this way. See, this is the main tank. Right? Now, our all winding, etc., is within the main tank. That is somewhere here. Now, that tank should always be full of oil, because if there is an air gap, that will be serious. So, but at the same time, you are correct that when the temperature goes up and down, because that will depend on load. When the load increases, temperature increases. When the load decreases, temperature decreases. So evening load, very high, oil temperature goes up. The middle of the night, load goes down, temperature goes down. So oil will expand and contract. But we have to give some space for expansion and contraction. But at the same time, we have to ensure that under no circumstances air should come in. So this conservator tank is used, and it is never full. It is half full with oil. So when it expands, that additional volume, that will be taken by oil. And when it contracts, again, oil will come down, but it will never come to the tank. It will be a little lower surface. So the air volume will increase or decrease. But then there will be a question that when oil expands, it will push air out of conservator. When oil contracts, the air will come in. But when air will come in, along with that moisture will come in. How to protect that?
Sir, there have a breather. In this breather, there are some put silica gel which absorb the moisture.
Good. But this is an old concept, first of all. Okay, breather will be there. But breather is not enough to protect against the moisture. Nowadays, it is completely different concept. This is called a diaphragm separated tank. That means it is like a balloon sort of diaphragm, right? In the middle of the tank, there will be a diaphragm. It is flexible diaphragm. So when the oil expands, it pushes the diaphragm up and air goes out. And there is a breather, but even when the air comes in, silica gel cannot take out all the moisture. So moisture will come in. But since there is a diaphragm, the air and oil will not touch each other. So now we have what is called a diaphragm sealed conservators. So that is very good, protection against the moisture. Now you can see my mouse here. Here you can see top of it. Achha, what are these rings? Can you see here? You can see 3, 1, 2, 3 rings are here, or 4 here. What are these rings? This is what I already told you. That is the grading rings. I have tried to explain earlier, right? That by grading ring, we try to make the potential distribution uniform. This is done for these high voltage components, that we put these rings so that this is actually for this vertical component. By the way, can you tell me what is this vertical component from here to the top? You look at my mouse. This entire vertical component, what is this? Connected to the terminal of the transformer. Here you see the terminal of the transformer. Look at my mouse. Then you have the conductor. And then you have this vertical component. What is this one? This is actual electrical engineering, right? What is this component called? Give some suggestion. You should not remain silent. What is your idea? What is this? This is called lightning arrestor. That means this conductor will be connected to the transmission line on the left side, and that will go for another 100 kilometers. So lightning can come, or rather lightning over voltage can come, but that should not be allowed to reach the transformer terminal. So before the transformer terminal, we have put a lightning arrestor so that if a lightning comes from the left side, at this point, it will be bypassed to earth. It will not reach the transformer terminal. Right? Without lightning arrestors, transformers are not used because this is a very expensive transformer. See, like it is an 8 MVA, not a very high transformer, but still quite expensive. You can see here rectangular blocks. You can look at my mouse. What are these?
Radiating tank.
These are the radiator banks, right? We call it radiator banks. So this is called forced oil cooling. So oil will be pumped from the tank and it will flow through that and go back to the tank. And in the process, it will radiate the heat and cooling will work. What is this one? This turret type structure here, you can see here. What is this one?
Oil bushing.
This is the bushing, because see, this is the conductor, right, coming from the high voltage line, and then here it will go into the transformer tank. So that's the bushing, and on the other side also you have the bushing, you can see. So one will be high voltage bushing, the other will be the low voltage bushing. So it's a 33 by 11 kV transformer. So this is the 33 kV side and this is the 11 kV side. So looking at the bushing, you can say which one at the high voltage, which one at the low voltage. So this is another tips you remember. If you look at a transformer and if I ask, tell me which one is HV side, don't look at anything, just look at the bushing. Always the high voltage bushing will be much bigger. So you can always say that which one is the high voltage side. So these are the typical components, and inside the transformer, of course, we cannot see. So we can't see. This is our testing transformer in our lab. I have taught you testing transformer. So this is our testing transformer. You can see here, it is a 250 kV transformer, and this vertical block is a capacitor. It's just a capacitor. It looks like this, but it's just a capacitor. It is used for measuring this high voltage. That means we have a capacitive potential divider. This is the high voltage capacitor. Low voltage capacitor is at the bottom. It's a small one. So you can see that just one capacitor of 250 kV is so big. So can you have a 1000 kV capacitor? It's not possible. Just not possible. And it is a relatively smaller testing transformer. By the way, what is it? This one. Anyway, I think this photograph I have already shown you, right? Is it? I have shown you earlier? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Now I go to this other one. See again the static shield. See how it is used. And you can see here the conductors are quite large in diameter. You can see here my mouse. Now these are because we want to reduce corona, so that we have increased the diameter of the conductors. No other reason. This is not for current carrying. For current carrying, you don't require such big diameter. It is only to reduce the corona. Okay, then static shield application again. This is the high voltage transmission line. And here you can see this is the string insulator. And on the high voltage side, you can see the rings, which I have already told you. These are called corona shield, static shield, corona ring. So many names are there. On the left side diagram, you can see the two rings here. This is a what is called a string insulator, and you can see these rings. So typically, we always use these shields. This is a bushing, a broken bushing. I have taken the photo intentionally. That what is there inside. So you can see that what you see from outside is only called a housing or the bushing cover. That means the transformer already I have shown you. Okay, this one, what you see is actually called only the housing or the bushing cover. Inside is something like this. So this is the conductor that goes in. And the most critical part is where it enters the tank. This is the tank. This photo is from the transformer tank. You can see the ground is quite low here. You can see the transformer is quite big, or rather quite large. So this photo is taken from the transformer top. So you can see the height. So this is the point where the conductor goes into the tank. So a special design is made at this point. Rest of the part, it is primarily the bushing cover, and of course this space is never kept air, it is filled with oil. So that is typically a bushing, but bushings have many different types. This is only one type bushing, there are several different types. Yeah, interesting the photo here. This is called a transformer bank. Now you can see here, this is one transformer bank, this is two, this is three. Now why is it so? Actually, when the transformer rating becomes too high, for example, I have, the Faraka super thermal. Every generator is rated at 500 megawatt. Too high for one transformer. We cannot handle 500 megawatt in one transformer, and we should not. Because if anything goes wrong, there will be a severe problem. So what we do, we take smaller transformers, and then individual phases are just single phase transformers. And here you can see two transformers in parallel makes phase A. Second one, phase B. Third one, phase C. So what happens now, 500 megawatt first of all is divided into three parts, and then each part is divided into two. So each one comes around 60 megawatt maybe. Or not 60 megawatts, some 80 megawatts, 85 megawatts. That is manageable for one unit. Another advantage is that if we do it like this, oh, by the way, you can ask me that how we are doing it. No, very simple. See, this star delta connection can be done externally also. It's not necessary you have to do it inside the transformer. So the connections are done externally, either in star or in delta. But the advantage is that at least one of these unit, I can keep it as a spare. So that if anything goes wrong, immediately we replace it. So that our generating station doesn't go down. We can continuously supply the power. This is the concept of transformer bank. And probably you have studied also that even if it is a delta connection, if any of the entire phase goes down, still we can use it as a V connection. You know that. Have you studied V connection? There is something called a V connection of three-phase transformers. Have you studied V connection? V for vector. V connection? Three-phase transformer, V connection, have you studied?
Um,
Yes or no? You are not answering me. It seems you have not studied. Probably otherwise. Anyway, there is something called a V connection of three-phase transformer. So even if any one phase goes out, both of these, still we can supply power at 66.6% of its capacity. It is possible. We can do that. Then this photo already I have shown you that this is a cascade transformer. This is at the Central Power Research Institute in Hyderabad. So this is each one is 750 kV. So together we have 1,500 kV. This is the input side. This is the control room, this building. So everything is controlled from there. This is just for photo taking. And when we test, the objects are on the left side, so that any high voltage we can generate here. They have extremely high capacity. This is another view. This photograph also I have probably shown you. This one is very interesting. This is a series resonance high voltage generator. This is a 260 kV 83 ampere resonant testing set. So you can see this resonant testing set. So this object is being tested with the help of resonator circuit, and these are the L. Say L, you can see this is a coil, and then C will be there. Not everything is visible, but this is how it looks like. This is the 1200 kV AC transmission line, which is being used in the Bina circuit of Madhya Pradesh. And this is being tested by that 1500 kV generator set at CPRI Hyderabad. Very interestingly, how the conductor look like. If you look at my mouse, you see the conductor. I don't know whether you can see it, but this inset, it gives you the conductor element. This is called a, I think 10 conductor bundle is there. So you can see that instead of a single conductor, we have used 10 conductor in such a way that it becomes a circular or cylindrical shape, but it's not a full cylinder. Because you know that current doesn't flow through the entire cross section. It flows through the surface because of skin effect. So if I use one conductor of 10 times the cross section will not be used properly. But here, the skin effect will be reduced because the current is divided into 10 conductors. Secondly, if I increase only the area of cross section by 10 times, then the diameter doesn't increase by 10 times. Diameter only increases by the square root of that. Whereas here, you see the effective diameter has increased significantly, quite large, so that the corona will be reduced, because corona depends on the effective diameter of the conductor. So by means of this bundle conductor, we have reduced the corona, or at the same time, the current carrying capacity has been increased. Never confuse between bundle conductor and twisted conductor. Like you might have studied something called aluminum core steel reinforced conductors. They are typically twisted conductors, but that does not mean bundle conductors. Bundle conductors are like this. There are 2 conductor bundle, 4 conductor bundle, like that, and this is the largest one, the 10 conductor bundle. This is the multi-stage HVDC generator, which I have already explained to you. This is a 1000 kV HVDC generator in CPRI Hyderabad. I have already explained to you that, but this is actually that. And you can see here why I was telling that we have to have multiple stages. Can you imagine the height? If you just think about this people's height, if you take say 6 feet, can you imagine how big it is? This is the issue in the real life, that if things are not all that so small, which we can have in the lab. Just some of the things I would like to show you: circuit breaker and isolator arrangement. I think you know that circuit breakers are always used with isolator. Now here, this one is the circuit breaker, this brown T. And this one here on the left side, this horizontal arm is the isolator. Actually, this is a called a double break type isolator. That means there are two arms, one on the right, one on the left. So they rotate when they want to open. They rotate by 90 degrees. Both these, one in the anti-clockwise direction, the other in the clockwise direction. So then this isolator will be open. But isolators are never opened on load condition. First, the circuit breaker is open because this is used for actually breaking the current. And once it is open, then the circuit is already open. But now, think about it, that this circuit breaker is open, but isolator is not open. So this left side of the circuit breaker is still connected to the transmission line, and that is still having high voltage because that is supplied from some substation on the left, which is not switched off. So can I work here for some maintenance? Answer is no, I cannot, because this is still connected to high voltage. So what I have to do, I have to open this isolator. Now if I open this isolator, then the transmission line is connected to the left side of the isolator, but not to the right side. Now this circuit breaker, I can do the operation or maintenance operation. So circuit breakers are always having isolators on both the sides, left side and right side, because on both sides there could be connected transmission lines. And I already probably told you that in real life, nothing is ABC or phase 1, phase 2. In real life, we do it by colors. And that's why we say it is red, yellow, blue phase. So you can see here. Can you see here red color? Here in the middle. So this is the red phase circuit breaker.
Yes, sir.
This is the yellow phase circuit breaker. This is the blue phase circuit breaker. This is how we identify that which conductor is red phase, which conductor is white phase. So you can immediately identify. Otherwise, there is no way you can identify red, yellow, blue. So this is typically we do it. Generally, always some terminal will be colored. The conductors are never colored. Please don't confuse. Conductors are never colored. Typically, terminals are colored. This is another circuit breaker. There is a slight difference here. See here you see the bottom, this metallic structure at the bottom is earth. Then this vertical part is pure insulator, just insulator, support insulator. The top part is the breaker side. So this is called a live tank circuit breaker because the circuit breaker, entire circuit breaker is live always. Whereas this is called a dead tank circuit breaker because see the tank is at the bottom where the breaking part takes place, that is at the earth potential. And here you can see the line comes in, goes to the circuit breaker, but now since this is dead tank, you have two bushings here. So incomer goes through the bushing to the breaker, then outgoing one comes out of the bushing, goes out. And here also, if you look on the back side, you can see the isolator here after the breaker. This side you cannot see, only part of it you can see here. This is again an isolator, and I was telling you that there will be two arms. So you can see here two arms. This is the isolator in open position. And when they close, they will rotate by 90 degrees, then they will close. That is exactly what I was trying to tell you in this diagram. See, in the middle they are connected when they close, and now in the middle they are open. They have moved by 90 degrees. These are the isolators, and here you can see again RYB. the three isolator positions. Here you can see the CTs and PTs, and you can clearly see the radial blue. Here you can clearly see, right, that RYP phases. Looking at it, if somebody asks that, can you tell me which one is CT and which one is PT? Is it possible? The answer is yes, but you have to know it. How? I will explain it with the help of this blue color. It will be easy because you can see it clearly. Look at this blue color here in the middle here. Look at it. You can see the conductor is going into it and another conductor is coming out of it. So there are two conductors you can clearly see. One is going in, one is going out. This is always typically the current transformer, because current transformer primary is connected in series with the line. So therefore you have these two terminals of the primary, and the primary winding is inside, which is in series with the line. The secondary is there also inside. So anywhere where you can see these two lines going in and coming out is actually a CT. What about this one, this blue one? You can see here, not two lines are going in. This is simply going on top of it. So that means this is a parallel connection. Clearly, this is a parallel connection. That means there is a primary winding and one terminal of the primary is connected to the high voltage. The other terminal of the primary is earth at the bottom. So this is in parallel with the line. So therefore, this is PT. So look at it. If there are two terminals, one going in and one coming out, it should be a CT. And if you find that there is only one terminal at the top, so it's a parallel connection, it should be a PT. That's how we identify CT and PT. I mean, from any power engineer knows it, but since you are third year students, I want to tell you that these are the practical things. This is again single phase transformer bank. You can see this is a single phase transformer because there is one bushing, high voltage bushing and low voltage bushing, and this is the lightning arrestor. And all lightning arresters are provided with a grading ring. There are reasons, because if the voltage distribution is not uniform, there will be serious trouble. Again, a lightning arrestor, but this is a three-phase transformer. You can see three bushings, and so therefore three lightning arresters are there. These are the lightning arresters. And then after that, again by the same logic, you can see one where one is going in, the other is coming out. So this must be a CT if you look at the connection. And this is called a gapless lightning arrestor, which is, I mean, slightly beyond your course, so I will not go into that. But what I will try to show you is slightly different. Just one more thing to give you, this is all to give you a practical, idea. Let me see where I have it. This is something, where is it? This is a video I want to show you. Must be here. Correct. What happens if you open an isolator under loaded condition? I told you that isolator should not be. I already told you that an isolator should never be opened under loaded condition. It is always the circuit breaker which should be opened. What happens if an isolator is opened with current? That means loaded condition. So I will show you a video. First of all, I have to open it. And then I have to share you. Let me see if I can share you. I hope it will be coming. Something is coming on your screen, and a substation.
Yes.
Okay, now there will be a video. How it will do it? see here. This is the something that happens. See, you see here, this is the isolator. Look at my mouse. At the middle, they are connected. Now, the right side will open in the clockwise direction, left side will open in anti-clockwise direction. But now this is loaded condition. And in this loaded condition, this is being opened. And look at the arc that has been formed. And look at the length and etc. I mean, unbelievable. So therefore, you can see that why isolators are not opened under loaded condition. So these are the things that you study in the class, but this is exactly what happens in a substation. Now, that sort of arc, if it happens in substation, there will be very, very severe accident. So that's why we don't do it. So please remember that whatever we try to tell you in the class, there is a practical reflection. And that's why sometimes I'm feeling very dejected. I mean, I must tell you, every class I'm telling that I'm really dejected with my students. I mean, right now I am seeing only 13 students joining the class. Now, my question is very simple. If this is an interview for your job, I think this will be 64 or 94. I mean, don't give me all those, useless logics that my net is not connected, my this and that. I mean, somehow I'm feeling that you people have lost touch with studying. Somehow. I mean, how it has happened, I don't know. I came back after 5 years and I'm finding something strange has happened here. And I feel very, 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 very dejected that why students are not interested in study. I mean, everybody will get a job, everybody will have a career later on, but when I find 13 students attending a class, I don't feel like taking your class. I tell you, I mean, openly don't feel like. I mean, why should I take your class? I can simply mail you some notes and finish it. I mean, why I'm every day coming and taking your class? I am really something. I mean, I feel very sad. I joined Jadavpur University as a student in 1979. This is the 42nd year I am in Jadavpur University. I have never seen this type of Jadavpur University behavior. Unbelievable. So you can log out. Thank you.